people essentially, they don't, and when people say something like, this is what people do or think, we're talking about nature, right? We're talking about the nature of an individual, irrespective of their personal growth trajectory, whatever they've actually, come to terms with or how they've changed, whatever it is. We're talking about nature. We're talking about what people naturally do, right? As the ancient, the aristocracy would call people, when they wouldn't refer to people as people, they would say the profane. It's the commoner, right? The common person. The person, to them, it was, they're not educated, right? And education is important because of wisdom. Education is important because of the broad way is the hard way. People, there's so many terms. There are so many. I have yet to find a term in the Bible, or really almost anywhere, phraseology, terminology, whatever it might be. I've yet to find terminology that is not sensible. It all is sensible, and most importantly, it's sensible outside of the tradition, outside of the discipline. The thing that is natural to the tradition is the symbolism, the language, right? The story, but the stories, they're just stories, Yeah, okay. So they're not just stories, right? Stuff happened, right? But we weren't there. We don't know for sure, right? We're not Jewish, right? We're not Jewish. I mean, not by heritage, not by cultural upbringing, right? So we're brought into this story, and don't get me wrong, it's a fantastic story. It's a wonderful story. It's a scary story. It's a terrifying story. There's backwards people, right? But we are backwards people. Generally, everybody is relatively backwards compared to some other people that's much more forwards, right? I mean, we'll look back. You look back on people in the 50s and think that they did weird stuff, right? You look back. You can look back at anybody. But when I look back on people in the 1800s, 1700s, whatever it is, I see people much more in tune with themselves. I see people that are incredibly thoughtful. I see a lot more integrated personality, a lot of more distinguished people in ranks, in power. And I mean, that ebbs and flows, right? Because, there's a kind of a social corruption cycle, right? Which is what the Bible is the core theme of the Bible, the signs of the times. I mean, it's the signs of the times is understanding that cycle. And the idea is that if you understand a cycle, you can overcome it. You can be outside of it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you will be unaffected by the cycle directly or partly or whatever, but it means that you can prepare. But it also does mean that you can avoid the cycle if you have the power to avoid the cycle, right? The problem is, here's a problem. The problem is that truth is uncomfortable, okay? Especially if you amass tons of power, tons of money, tons of everything, and everything that you've amassed was gained by something that was maybe to be seen as not necessarily wrong, but maybe wrong, maybe even stolen, like with a better perception or a better perspective, a perspective illustrated by your ancestors is terrible, right? So that's that right there. That's the friction of revelation. You think about it. Revelation means, what does revelation mean? To reveal, right? How in the world? Because apocalypse means the same thing. It just means to reveal. You know what I mean? Like what? It's a time of revelation. So let me get this straight. Revelation, the understanding of what things mean, is equated to world war. Think about that. Because hierarchies are established falsely. I mean, are people in power structures going around asking everyone like, hey, should I be like, should I be manager? Or are you, actually, show me your work. Let me see if you can do it better than me. Let me see. Go ahead. Let me see. And then honestly evaluating that? No. People, regardless of how they attain power, once they're in power, they act like they belong there no matter what. It's statuesque. You know what I mean? It's rock. It's concrete. It's not going anywhere. I was always there. I was always meant to be here. Like Statue of David or something. Like I'm here or whatever. And I'm not saying that, I'm not being revolutionary. Okay, I do tend to be revelatory because I had to find some revelation in my own life to free myself from, my own psychological strongholds and things like that. But I'm not interested. I'm not interested in apocalyptic disruption, because apocalyptic disruption is destruction, because it doesn't give anybody a chance to adjust. It freezes people in place. That's what revelation is, and what it does. It's time's up. And I was talking about this earlier. It's like this with every story. All stories, like vampire stories, things like that. Vampires can't see themselves in the mirror. Vampires don't like the sun, and it's for the same reason. The sun and the mirror burn them, right? So if they saw themselves in the mirror, right, they'd be like, "Oh shit," and then they would not be able to change because they'd have to run. They had to run from that. So that's exactly what happened. They ran from the mirror so much that they're desensitized to what the mirror actually says about them, what their reflection actually tells them about who they are and where they really belong in the structure, right? That's the idea. I mean, this is the hellish idea of understanding that you may not really truly belong in a hierarchical position, right? But what's interesting about now, and I'm all over the place, but it's the thread is there. I mean, it's the thread's consistent. What's interesting about what Jesus is that he wasn't there he didn't go, like they offered him to be an army and go, take over the Romans and all this stuff, to do a revolution. He didn't do it. Is it because he was scared? No, because, well, first of all, I mean, he probably was. I mean, I can't say, I don't speak for Jesus, but I'm saying he probably was following along with what was foretold, or at least what was foretold was accurate to how he felt about things, or because, he's Son of God, whatever. But I'm saying, like, the idea is that he wasn't overthrowing power. He didn't overthrow anybody. Everybody had free will, right? He revealed things, and the thing is he talked in parables to people that were, down and out, whatever it was, as a mercy to them, right? But when he went and talked to the Pharisees, people that he said already knew better, he was very explicit and judgmental and very intense, because people that already know better, what do you need to tell them sweet parables for? They already know. You know what I mean? There was no time, right? And they needed that spur, right? They needed that spur because they were, they needed to like crack open and fix things. It was too late. It was Egypt all over again. You know what I mean? It's a cycle, right? Anyways, you can go all night with this, but revelation is explication. Revelation is plain language. And what's interesting is that, Jesus taught in parables, and people today in church don't teach in parables. They teach in explication, which is interesting. But the difference is, here's the weird part. They teach in explication very shallow teaching, which is good because, and I mean, I'm not talking about, I don't know every church, right? But I've seen a lot of churches, dude. I mean, I've seen a lot of videos online. They speak shallow explication, because if you're going to speak plainly and you're talking in front of large groups of people, you have to speak about you got to stay liminal. It'll kill you. You know what I mean? People will kill people. You know what I'm saying? And it's true. I mean, it happens all the time. It used to. I mean, it still kind of does. Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was Explication Central. Explication Central. You know what I mean? Now, does it mean that he was right about everything? No, it means that his approach was probably not as merciful as it could have been, right? And I mean, I think that's, and it doesn't necessarily mean that he was absolutely correct, but it means that his word was, he was very coherent. It was very clear. He could say like 8 words, and it was like conclusion was obvious. It was like things he would say. It was like not necessarily an illusion, but there's this thing that happens when a coherent line of reasoning is laid out, real quickly. The defense mechanism of the human brain, it doesn't have time. It's like, holy shit, I guess that's just true. And then now you feel, and now your defenses have been overcome, and now you're angry, right? And if people are hugely ideological, hugely psychologically unstable, they will do things like that. You know what I mean? And people that feel like they've been, they start to think that they shoot the messenger. You know what I mean? They think that the messenger was evil. The source of their anger is, I mean, the messenger did bring that to them. The messenger didn't necessarily think to be merciful, but the thing is sometimes there's not enough time. That's the collateral damage of revelation is that when you have revelation that did not come from a mentor, that was found out by people just randomly or whatever, or through hardship, dude, how can you expect them to be compassionate and deliver the message perfectly? I mean, dude, John the Baptist, dude, and he comes out of the wilderness eating the locusts and honey, and he's just yelling at the Pharisees. I mean, dude, did you hear the sound of that guy? He sounded just terrifying. He sounded insane. You know what I mean? He sounds insane. Okay? Now, I'm just saying, he sounds insane. Anybody would think he was insane. But the thing is that what's interesting is the Pharisees, legalistically, they were afraid. They didn't want to kill right away or do anything because part of them knew. I mean, they were intimately aware of the scriptures, right? And they still didn't get it exactly, or at least they were blindsided. They were blinded because, see, if you have power and you have position, you don't see the truth where it means something has to change about you, right? That's the hard thing. That's the blind spot, right? That's the partiality, bias, whatever. Because and it's an instinct. The instinct is I'm going to follow the truth where it's comfortable and kind of like figure out the rest later or something like that. It's not logically happening. It's usually just kind of like an intuition, like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm going to go over here where this is true too. You know what I mean? And then people cherry pick whatever, and they make up their own thing. It's very, very hard to just look at what's true. It's very hard, very, very difficult, and it's not necessarily needed until you have some issues going on in a society, right, or in a household. What did Jesus say about households? No one wants to talk about that either he did explicate it kind of. He didn't really go into detail, but Jesus said, I mean, this is like, it's not even really about Jesus. It's like, dude, it's just a fact of nature. If revelation comes to a family, there's a split over power, usually over social hierarchy, because the down and out, they want to do better, right? And when truth comes to the down and out, it's great because they're like, oh my God. So like these people that are in charge, they're like full of it, right? But the people that are in charge, the truth to them, suddenly, it doesn't involve, special treatment for their power, their positions in power. It knocks them off their throne logically. And so they fight back. And so the truth as a sword divides a family dynamic across lines of perceived hierarchy, power, whatever it is, right? But here's the thing though. Well, and I mean, there's different ways to look at it, but generally speaking, if you have a false power structure, if you have a power structure that's sustained on truth that is no longer serving even really in the community or even really the people that are in charge, that's the brutal reality of it is that a lot of times you'll have people in power that are actually supported by partial truths that do themselves a disservice by remaining in power the way that they're in power, by not exposing themselves to a little bit of revelation. And like I said before, Jesus didn't throw people out of power. He just literally kept telling them the truth. He kept showing them the mirror over and over and over and over again, right? He let them figure it out. He let them figure it out to the point where he let them kill him. You know what I mean? And he went willingly. I mean, it's insane. Because at some point, I think he realized if he loved his people, and of course, it's a known thing. If a hero goes all the way, dies, what they said gets looked at. You know what I mean? And that's what he was thinking. He was thinking legacy. He was thinking legacy so much that, I mean, think about what is he going to do? Okay, I give up. I'm going to go on vacation and just try to forget about all this, right? Like, it would eat him alive. He wouldn't be able to sleep. You know what I mean? It'd be better for him to just go through with it and, know dying that he was doing good for his people. At that point, he had suffered so much hardship trying to, Matthew 17:17, he's like, how much longer do I have to be with you people? They don't listen, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? He was, dude, he was probably like in Sheol. Not really. It said that, I think, obviously he didn't, it was on the cross, I think, is when he, got that Sheol experience or whatever, which was really a breaking of the law in general, because he shouldn't have to experience that because he didn't break any laws. Or at least he didn't break any laws that were known to the people at the time, or I'm not sure exactly how it works, but I can go to that later. But anyways, hey, if anybody wants to do a podcast or anything like that, I know I was talking to a couple people that wanted to do them, but if anybody wants to do that, I'm down. Hit me up. I'd love to talk about stuff with you. I'd like to see where you're at on issues. I'd like to, if you want to build something, you want to build like a platform, we can do that. You want to start a podcast, dude, we can do that. Doesn't got to be all about me. We don't got to talk about religion all the time. We can talk about anything. You know what I mean? We can do anything. I'm down. I'm trying to do something. Hit me up if you want on Messenger, or email me if you have my email. Or yeah, just hit me up on Messenger. I'm on there almost all the time. All right, guys.